a Senate Standing Committee on Families and Children for the 2026 general session. If the secretary would please call the roll.
Senator Deneen. Senator Funky Fromeyer. Senator Girdler. Senator Herron. Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Mills. Senator Thomas. Senator Webb. Senator Williams. Vice Chair Mades Bledsoe. Chairman Carroll.
Here. We do have a quorum and are duly authorized to conduct business. However, we will not be voting on any bills today. This meeting is granting a little latitude to a member of the committee, Senator Funky Fromeyer. And I would ask first that Katrina Bowman and Elizabeth Delaney, if you all would please come to the table. And Melissa Moore, you all want to come up together, Director, and thank you for being here this morning. I'm going to turn the floor over to Senator Funky Fromeyer to kind of lay a foundation for what we're going to hear this morning, and it'll be a good educational lesson for us in relations to licensure and dealing with child care and some of the aspects and struggles that providers have from time to time. So that's really why we did this. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to learn something today. So, Senator, if you would please, you have the floor, ma'am.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. And I am so grateful that all three of you, we've got Northern Kentucky coming all the way, serving our Covington region. Thank you, Katrina, for being here. And then Elizabeth, I shared with some that she is a dear friend, a neighbor, and the youngest of her children is the same age as the youngest of my children. They're sophomores in high school. But what an entrepreneur, has 3 child care facilities. But she's going to tell us about the onboarding of the 3rd facility and some of the frictions that we need to better understand. And then Melissa Moore was so quick and responsive when we cried, please help, and how do we get this place open with 54 and waiting to get the place open. But we wanted to be a united front towards childcare. We want to acknowledge that there's probably from east to west to north to south in Kentucky, nothing more beneficial than safe, quality, foundational from birth all the way into, could be, in my case, I had my children in childcare up until they were 12, until they could really make scrambled eggs and bacon and be home with just minimal supervision until I finished my work day. But when we look about what the friction is that may actually slow us down from onboarding facilities quicker, most small business entrepreneurs cannot afford the very, very slow, challenging, full of friction process that we currently have in Kentucky. So our hopes are to, what can we do to improve, and where did we go wrong as legislators, perhaps overshooting the process of regulated childcare. So Elizabeth, I would love for you to introduce yourself for our committee and then share kind of this initial process, I guess, starting in September.
Okay, thank
Ladies,
you so much.
if each one of you would go ahead and introduce yourselves and then begin once we do that.
Good morning, Katrina Bowman. I am the Executive Director for Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission.
Elizabeth Delaney, owner and director of Bard Babies Daycare and the Learning Center.
Melissa Moore, Director for the Division of Regulated Child Care within the Office of the Inspector General.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for having us today. I'm here today as just to share a little bit about the process that we went through. And we started our child care center actually just 4.5 years ago. We opened our first center and hit maximum capacity within 3 weeks, expanded, hit capacity again within 3 months. We opened a second center 2 years later, hit capacity, and started increasing capacity at that location, and have been at capacity for 2 months after we opened. There's a dire need for childcare in our community. So our landlord approached us about an existing 5,800 square foot in the same complex that we were in, and asked if I wanted to expand my child care center to there as well. So before I signed the lease, I did check in with licensing. I reached out to my regional branch manager to see what does logistics look like if I wanted to expand in the same complex, but it wasn't attached. He gave me advice before signing the lease. We started the process, and he informed me that as soon as I got the CO from the state building inspector, he would help expedite so we could fill our center. We had at the time 30 kids on our waiting list, and our intentions were to create like a Montessori-based preschool out of that space. So we started the process with the state building department and hit one roadblock after another. In fact, it took 5 months of red tape and unrealistic expectations from the state building department. The complex is an older complex, and they wanted paperwork and building plans that just simply didn't exist. 30-day turnaround every time we submitted new documentation to the state building department. So at the time that we finally did get our CO from the building department and incurring the cost of an engineer to build out plans of this building, we were 5 months into our rent. I had been talking with licensing the whole time. They were very much supportive and on board to help us streamline as soon as we got the CO to get the doors open, because I was incurring so much in rent that I just couldn't recover without putting kids in the building. So we did get the CO and started the process to get our license expansion. And at the time, we were led to believe it would be an expansion because it's in the same building as our other license. We submitted through the portal as instructed and found out 3 to 4 days later after follow-up that the portal was not, in fact, the place to submit the paperwork, and we emailed it. So that took another week to hear back and process paperwork. We were scheduled for an inspection or for the paperwork to go to a surveyor, and it was at that time that it was discovered that we were misinformed throughout the whole process by our regional branch manager, and that it would indeed have to be an initial application because it wasn't connected to the rest of our daycare. So our frustrations just snowballed from there because we were at the time 6 months into our rent, not putting a single child in the center, and having to start the entire process over. We were very frustrated and defeated. I reached out to Senator Frohmeyer asking and pleading for help because as a small business owner, the amount of expenses I had incurred up to that point, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to open my doors once we got through with the initial paperwork. So we got on the phone with licensing and found out that I was going to have to mail my initial application in. They didn't accept payment over the phone, and the quickest way for me to open my doors was to drive to Frankfort and drop off my packet. So live an hour and 45 minutes away, and we had just opened another business 3 days earlier, but I had to drop everything to fill out an initial application and drove it to Frankfort in order to get the application looked at and get a surveyor out so we could open our doors. And so that's what we had to do. So today I'm here not just because of what happened to us. It was a huge financial strain on our business. 70 kids a day at max capacity, and that center over 6 months equates to $386,000 in lost revenue that my small business incurred over the delays from both the state building inspection and licensing, plus the $35,000 in rent. It was astronomical, and the process to get our doors open, we felt like should have been streamlined from both the state building department and the licensing department. So today we're here looking for solutions and change and upgrades to the system and consistency across licensing from the different departments. Again, we were given misinformation, and if we were given information from the beginning that it needed to be an initial center, we would have submitted the application right away. So we're looking for those. We're looking for those changes. We would like changes in the portal so we can process payments through the system and not have to drive paperwork to Frankfort. We would like to be able to upload documents into the portal so we have better communication with licensing. We're not here to cause a rift. We're here to figure out ways that we can work better with licensing so we can open centers quicker We happen to be in a situation where a transportation bill that's about to pass is going to take out one of our child care centers, and we're going to have to go through this process again to relocate because of a road infrastructure. So I'm very eager to help advocate for change. So when we have to open up our next center, it can be a realistic 4 to 6 weeks of getting our doors open and not a 6-month, $400,000 loss to our business. So we're here to work with licensing and legislators to advocate for change.
It's just good to hear that someone is actually opening up center after center. That's refreshing.
Thank you. It's been challenging, but
I
there's a
have
need.
No doubt. I have no
There is a
doubt.
need.
Let's, Director, if you don't mind, we'll let you make comments on this, and then we'll get into some detail. And this is really good timing on this. There may be some language that we could amend to a bill that's going through the system as far as the building inspector, and maybe we could put some time frames on that. I'd have to do some more checking on that, but I could see the value of that. So, Director,
Thank
do you want to go, or how do you all, Senator, how?
Senator.
Director, go ahead, please. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. First, I want to thank the senator for the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate your comments, and thank you, Chairman, for giving us this space. We in the Division of Regulated Child Care, we recognize the need for child care and how important it is. We see those deserts. We have done our best to try to work towards filling in those gaps. Of course, we have tip sheets out for parents who are not able to find child care. We try our best to work within the confines of the regulations and the demands that are on us, the red tape that is around the application process. Some of those things provide us significant challenges as well. County to county, zoning can be different. We actually worked with the fire marshal so that there was such a need and a backlog for them that they have now trained local fire departments on how to do those inspections to help in those areas. But we make mistakes. As she has said, this was a perfect storm for our staff, and it's something that we will work on to do better, to be better. But there are those challenges that are beyond our control, and one of those is what she speaks to. We do not have an electronic system to accept payments. We are not in the 2026 in those aspects. She's exactly right. The fastest way for her to have gotten her license processed that day was to travel and hand deliver it. And our hands are tied at this point within OIG to establish that process, because I don't know that we have that anywhere in healthcare, the Division of Healthcare, or audits and investigations either within our division. So, and I'm not sure in other areas and avenues of the cabinet if that's the case. We are hopeful that some of the bills, Senate Bill 160, we see that there's been some change recommended that we think will be beneficial to us and help us in partnering with child care. Also, there is the, I think, House Bill 6 references the Certified Child Care Community Designation Program. We do hope that that will be something that we can partner with to move forward to address these deserts and things like that. We try to share with providers when they reach out to us that depending on that their easiest avenue towards obtaining licensure is to find a building that is already zoned for child care so that they do not have these issues. If they are reaching out to us to ask about, I would like to become a child, operate and open a child care center. And we recognize that county to county that varies. So that's a huge obstacle that we find for providers as we attempt to partner. And then once we know, my job, and I think as the director of the division, is to take responsibility for those errors that we make and do our best to try to partner and move forward with that, which I think we tried our best to do that for your center as well and for any others. And it's why we're here today, in hopes to partner to improve our processes and to bring about bring about more childcare and to reduce the red tape around applying.
Let's talk first about the inspector part of it. And was this a state building inspector that came in, and the struggles were within codes, building codes within that facility?
So before we could even get a state building inspector into the building, the plan reviewer would not even look at our application because we didn't have the blueprints of the building. And due to the age of the building, I personally know both the original owner and the current owner of the building, and they just didn't exist. And everything that was on file at the city administration building was submitted and didn't meet their requirements. So we did go through other channels to the local fire department, send a certified letter stating that they had checked all of the walls to make sure they were fire rated, that they were approved for a child care center, as well as we had a private fire alarm company come in and state the same and submitted that. That paperwork took 30 days to be reviewed by the plan reviewer and then ultimately denied again until we had a engineer draw up the blueprint of the space, and then it was checked off and we were able to get an inspector out there. Once the inspector was there, he saw no issues and we were able to move forward. But the process was 30 days every time we had to submit. And one of the other hurdles was a common sense hurdle, in my opinion, because there were only toilets for 70 children in our space, but the square footage allowed for 150 children. And so we tried sending documentation stating that we would never be able to put more than 70 children in this space due to the toilet capacity, and it was just denied. So I feel like there was a missing element of common sense. They were making us follow the regulations for 156 children for capacity size, but we would never realistically be able to put that many children in the building. Had they gone with the 99 and under, we wouldn't have had to have the building plans of the entire space.
Senator Funky Fromeyer.
As you were describing the regional branch manager, can you describe, Mrs. Moore, how that is lined up in Kentucky? I'm not familiar with that. And then sort of what sort of written processes and documentation was this person providing then to Mrs. Delaney?
Sure. So within the Office of the Inspector General, we have a central office located in Frankfort and 4 regional offices. Those are located in London, Louisville, Hopkinsville, and some London, Louisville, Lexington, and Hopkinsville. I'm sorry. I always want to say Somerset. Some reason I favor Somerset as a county, I think. So, so typically our central office processes those initial applications and is the individual to respond to make decisions about the documentation that is accepted. Ms. Delaney had a very positive relationship, I think, with the branch manager in the regional office and was corresponding back and forth with him. Unfortunately, one of the determinations that needed to be made was about contiguous property, and that is sort of a gray area in our regulation because over the years, contiguous property has been viewed as different things. So at one point, it was looked at as if it was under the same roof. And I think in your particular situation, it is a strip mall where there is businesses in between. So that was not considered to be contiguous. But Ms. Delaney received some advice in some direction that was not correct, unfortunately, which led to a delay. Once she began corresponding with our central office, actually, we overlooked the need for it to be contiguous until actually one of our surveyors was the individual who caught that error and brought it to my attention. Upon that, we reached out to Ms. Delaney and were able to turn around and get her, once she submitted her application, we were able to get her license to her within about a 3-day turnaround. Typically, an initial application, if the documentation is correct, usually can be turned around within a couple of weeks, unless there are a need for if there's a need for deficiencies to be issued. Then of course we have to negotiate a plan of correction, and sometimes that will extend it to 30 days. But typically we're at about a 2-week turnaround if the correct information is being provided.
And
So
what's
this
the-
just happened to be a perfect storm.
Right.
in
What's
this
the
case.
training difference? It's sounds a little layered in folks here. What's the training of a surveyor versus the training of the regional branch manager that was providing Ms. Delaney direction and guidance?
So there is we look to the manager to have more experience and to have more training. In this particular case, it was an oversight on our part in actually examining the floor plan. And so it was when all documentation was reviewed, the surveyor, who's trained to pinpoint detail, found the detail that yes, the floor plan did not show that the space was contiguous. And so for whatever reason, I can't speak to why the manager at the time believed that the space was contiguous to move forward. However, by our standards and definition, it is not.
I'm sorry, and I guess that's where my ignorance is. What's the when I think about that sort of accountability chart, who's accountable to who, and ultimately our effort is a safe place for
Certainly, so-
childcare. How's that a layer benefiting the process? Are we having a better result because of it, or do we have maybe one too many layers or two too many layers?
Actually, I think we have as excuse me, is a crisis of wanting to help. So, it was a matter that should have came to our central office for a decision. When it comes to matters of licensing and making those determinations, Ms. Delaney should have been directed immediately to speak to our central office because that is where those decisions are made. The regional office works on surveying, but does not make the decision about the actual license and whether or not the property would be contiguous. So, as the director, those matters should be elevated to me to speak with the Inspector General for those decisions, because that is one of those areas where the regulation contiguous can be defined very differently. If you look at in the case of a strip mall, there were businesses in between, and there was not any access directly from one to the other. Had there been an internal access, we would have allowed that and considered that it be contiguous. In the case of sometimes we have a campus, and if there could be multiple buildings on the campus, we would consider those contiguous if it was the only buildings that were on the campus were for childcare. So those determinations aren't, not every manager has been privy to that. However, we will embark on a retraining to ensure that our regional staff, our regional management are informed of what contiguous is. It is something that actually we are scheduled to do tomorrow.
And I think when I was asking Katrina Bowman Thomas to be here too, the Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission has some substantial child care as well. Trying to better understand, we've got a private business that isn't necessarily drawing on the state and the federal resources. How do you work with the Office of our Regulated Child Care?
Okay, yeah. Well, Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Child safety, accountability, and workforce participation are shared priorities. I appreciate the thoughtful discussion around child care licensure and the opportunity to provide context from our work in communities across the Commonwealth. At NKCAC, we engage more than 30,000 Kentuckians each year, and a significant portion of the impact is through Head Start. And we have locations in Boone, Campbell, Kenton, and Pendleton. We have 6 locations there. We have our Early Head Start partnership, 6 locations in Boone, Campbell, and Kenton. And of course, strengthening families, supporting workforce participation, and contributing to the economic stability of local communities is what we do. Reliable early childhood education is not simply a service, it is workforce infrastructure. It allows parents to remain employed, pursuing training, and moving toward long-term self-sufficiency. And what I'd like to do is just give you an overview, an understanding of what the Head Start program is, and then give you a couple of recommendations as it relates to the regulations that we have to deal with at the state licensure. And so who are we? Who do we serve? And so the families that we serve in our Head Start program, 71% of them are employed. And of that, 79% work first shift, 12% work second shift, and 7.5% work third shift. When we look at our families, 45% of them are below 130% of the federal poverty guidelines. That's $42,900 a year, or $3,575 a month for a family of four. So think about that. These families are working, but they're making about $17 an hour on average for a family of four. 30% are at or below 100% of the federal poverty guideline, which is $33,000 a year for a family of four, or $2,750 a month. 3% of our families are experiencing homelessness, 2% are in foster care placement, and 8% of our children have a diagnosed disability. These are not families disconnected from the workforce. These are Kentuckians navigating economic pressure through actively participating in the labor market. Sustainable, high-quality early child learning makes all of this possible for them to be able to work, for their children to have decent and safe child care. And so I just want to share with you, I've got a PowerPoint here. Let me click this. I want to share with you just a story of one of our families that was enrolled at one of our programs. A single father in our community tragically lost his spouse and was left raising 3 daughters. Determined to provide a better future, he enrolled in Gateway Community and Technical College to pursue a career in automotive technology. His 2 youngest daughters, okay, full screen. Oh, here. This one. There we go. His 2 youngest daughters were enrolled in Head Start, and his oldest daughter was in middle school and receiving aftercare school support through our Lincoln Grant Scholar House. Head Start provided them with high-quality, safe early education, comprehensive health and dental services, mental health support. So as he was dealing with this tragedy and trying to figure out what supports to provide to him and his children to help them to navigate the social and emotional needs, Head Start was there to help to provide that. They provided nutritious meals, family engagement, and leadership development. And because of these supports, he was able to be stable, and his family was able to move forward in a comprehensive way. He completed his degree, he rebuilt his credit, he secured employment, and he purchased a home within 6 months of graduation. This is what happens when parental determination is paired with strong early childhood infrastructure. It's not dependency, it is economic mobility. And so in Head Start, we believe in accountability and high standards. And so Head Start is one of the most highly regulated early childhood models in the country. We have to meet the federal Head Start performance standards. We have to adhere to the Head Start Act. We do have to adhere to state child care licensure requirements. We have ongoing monitoring. We have yearly audits. And we also complete a community needs assessment to really understand what are the needs of the families in our communities. We are there to serve the neediest of the needy. Teachers in the Head Start classrooms are required to hold degrees in early childhood education or related fields, and this ensures their understanding of child development, classroom management, and instructional quality. And you can see here, this is just an example of two of the kids in the learning environments that they're in every day. Each classroom has a lesson plan, and each child has an assessment to really individualize their care. Health and safety are really foundational to the supports that we provide. Every child receives a dental, a vision, medical, hearing screens. As I mentioned before, there's mental health, disability services embedded in everything that we do. And then we meet all of the nutritional standards for as it relates to USDA. On this past year, we received a nutrition grant to really enhance the fresh food access for children in our classrooms. And so this year we'll be able to actually have raised garden beds in our communities, not only for our children, but for the entire community. And through this grant, what we do is we look at the children's BMI and really to determine, if they're underweight, if they're overweight, and then we're able to provide those nutritional meals for them to make sure that they are healthy.
Ms. Bowman, I don't mean to be rude. Could we move on to dealing with regulations? And I apologize.
no,
The-
yes,
the
no
focus of this meeting was to try to address some issues, and I do apologize.
No problem. The two recommendations that we have is one, streamlining the child care assistance for early childhood educators. Early childhood educators working in licensed child development centers are eligible for the child care assistance program. And so we know that approval for those teachers can take weeks to months for them to receive that the child care assistance. Those delays slow hiring, they create financial strain for new educators, and they discourage workforce entry. So to really streamline that process, even if there could be a separate process for those that are moving into those teaching roles, so they don't have to wait so long to actually receive that CCAP. If they could be categorically eligible, then that again could help streamline that process. Our second recommendation is around predictable and timely reimbursement of funds through the child care provider system. Reimbursement rates and timing significantly impact provider sustainability. When payments are delayed, centers experience cash flow strain. Providers have to rely on lines of credit to actually make their payroll or pull on emergency funds. Operational stability is threatened. So we really need reliable, predictable reimbursement. And that's essential really to make sure that our businesses can maintain that workforce capacity.
And are you talking child care assistance, or are you
Yes.
talking the partnerships with businesses?
Through the child care
assistance?
Yes,
Okay.
through the child care assistance. The way the system is set up now, when you bill, you have to bill for every day. And that can make it difficult because it's based on that child's daily attendance. But that child is holding that slide, even if they're not there every day. And so every month, what you're receiving is based upon that child's enrollment. And so you don't have a predictable stream of income. And so years before, it was set up where it was weekly, and you received that reimbursement. You knew what reimbursement you would receive. And as they've stated, the process is very convoluted. It's very heavily paper driven. So if there are ways to streamline that process and make those things electronic, then that would again help with those processes as well.
Where are we now on child care assistance as far as the work requirements or going to school?
Right now, with the child care assistance, you do, I've got it, give me 1 second. For the child care assistance, you have to be a resident of Kentucky, you have to be a U.S. citizen, and your children have to be under the age of 13. You have to be employed. You have to maintain full-time employment or be in full-time training. You can be in permanency and protective services. You can participate in SNAP ENT, and SNAP ENT is education and training while you're working to transition off of KTAP. If you're a teen parent or if you're participating in job search, you have up to 3 months to find a job and still receive those services.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I would be able to add, kind of piggybacking off of that, from the employer standpoint, we have employees that try to call in for the assistance. You know, they get free coverage for their children in the center as long as they work 20 hours a week or more. It is commonplace that they're on hold for 1 to 2 hours to even speak with a representative to start the process. We have our facility alone. We have 54 children on state subsidy. We have lost over $11,000 in state subsidy over the last 3 months, just from cases that have gotten denied from current employees that are meeting all of the requirements, but for some reason there's been a paper nuisance or something that has kicked it back out, and they don't go back and backdate. So it is a dire problem within the system that really needs an
You know,
overhaul.
I thought that had gotten better. I know at our center we had those struggles too. And
Yeah.
Director Moore, I know that through that process, it's not an automatic thing. You all still have to go through the process you would for anyone else that was applying for child care assistance, correct?
That is
and,
correct.
and why are we not making any progress in expediting those processes?
So I can't speak to the Child Care Assistance Program. That's actually the Division of Child Care and is not fall under the Office of Inspector General.
Should have had Andrea here today. Dr. Vanover, would you like to just broadly address that on those steps? Are you still familiar enough with that? Please. You knew if you were in the room, you were going to have to talk. And please introduce yourself for the record, please.
I'm Sarah Vanover. I work with Kentucky Youth Advocates as Policy and Advocacy Director. The reason that anyone who works in a child care program and gets the free child care for child care provider benefit, they have to go into the DCBS regional offices and apply in the same manner that any other working family would. And the main reason for that is that during that process, they have found that many of the child care providers qualify based on their income, and they did not know that. So when those people come in and they qualify based on income, then they can route them in a different direction to the typical subsidy program, and they qualify for federal dollars that way, which is out of the money that we get from the Child Care and Development Block Grant. At least 70% of those funds must be reserved for direct services to families, and that portion really goes to the Child Care Subsidy Program. In order to use maximum utilization of those funds, that's why the application process is the same. If someone does not qualify in the typical route, they're routed to the Child Care for Child Care Providers, and those are state funds that have been allocated for that program. So it has to do with the different funding streams, and we want to make sure that everyone is directed in the right manner and that federal funds have maximum utilization based on that. And I will say this too, the DCBS regional offices are not employees of Division of Child Care. That is where the Connect system is utilized. So when any of the child care programs send families to go to those regional offices, those are different employees that don't just deal with child care. They deal with SNAP, they deal with Medicaid, and there are a lot of rules that change with eligibility for Medicaid, SNAP, child care, and so they're trying to utilize all of that. It is typically a training issue, but I will say that those DCBS staff often turn over in the regional offices, often turn over as quickly as child care providers do due to the wage level that they are paid.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Vanover. If we can back up a little bit with the licensure process, in Senate Bill 160, we are establishing a process for new centers that once they get licensed, where there would be at least 2 visits a week for the first 6 months. One of those visits a week would have to be in person, and there would be some protections against a revocation of licensure during that 6-month period for support, but that wouldn't really affect you in your situation. You haven't gotten your doors open to that new facility yet.
We have.
Well, I mean, when you were having
the
these
next one.
issues, Director, help me understand as far as what support with a brand new provider coming on board and starting this process to be licensed. What direct support do we offer as a state to help someone through that process?
So there is Child Care Aware for licensed programs, and for certified homes, we have the Family Child Care Network. And those are available as a free service. When we take applications, when we begin our first initial conversations with interested applicants, we do share that information and encourage throughout the process that individuals take advantage of those organizations. And I do believe that you worked with Child Care Aware. Is that correct?
Yes, we do work with Child Care Aware. I guess my question would be, Child Care Aware always sends us to our regional branch manager. So it would be helpful as a provider to have a clear-cut list from licensing as to what question, when we have a specific question, what department we should seek resources from, because we do typically always go to our Child Care Aware coach, who just funnels us to the same person all the time. So if there were clear-cut expectations, in my case, if I would have known to go to the central office, it would have eliminated a lot of our issues.
So we do have a child care regulation committee that meets monthly that brings all those individuals together. So we have a representative from the network, from Child Care Aware, from the Division of Child Care, and from the Office of the Inspector General. So I can definitely bring that need to make sure that there is the correct clarification in sending to the right person, whether it be an issue for a central office or for a regional matter.
So that would be very helpful.
Director, do we need to do some work on streamlining the process for initial licensure with centers coming on board and having more proactive supports? Because, I mean, we all hope that we're going to be laying some foundation that leads to center growth within our state. And the more we can expedite those processes and the more, you know, it should be, if I'm opening up a new center, unfortunately, I never had to go through this. When I got on board, our center was up and going. I'm not sure I would have survived that. But, you know, where there, you know, maybe a direct person that a new provider can have access to help, a navigator, more or less, to help them through the whole system, and somebody that's proactive, not that you have to request and wait, but that they work with that center from day one to help them navigate through there, as we're trying to do for that first 6 months of licensure with the bill that we have going through the process now.
Absolutely. I think that would be a wonderful idea. And if we had the resources, of course, with cuts to our budget, things like that, we are limited on the staff that we have, but it would be a great resource, I do believe, if we were able to designate a position to be a navigator for providers that are onboarding. I do think that one of the most significant challenges, though, continues to be the variation for zoning county to county, because that is, the cost of that can be different. You know, we have providers that have child care centers in more than one county, and they will speak about the differences between obtaining the fire marshal, obtaining that zoning approval, what the costs were for that, different things, what the challenges were. So that continues to be an ongoing issue for us as well.
And I think that's one of the things that would be addressed in House Bill 6 under the community child care designation. And that does come up in a lot of conversations. Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Yes, I really appreciate this conversation. And when we're talking about this, I'm hearing surveyor really could be the navigator. And I think about the power of this little device right here to be able to actually do a video walkthrough. So a person, I'm shocked that you don't have a regional office anywhere near to Northern Kentucky. We're one of the largest population centers in the entire state, only second to Louisville. We're even larger than Fayette. So I'm a little surprised by that. And maybe that's worth considering how we can adjust. But utilizing this technology, and your CCAP categorically eligible idea, I think, is excellent, Katrina. And I'm wondering about how that can tie more closely into DCBS. Your point was great that there are federal dollars and state dollars, but you yourself and you employ bright, capable people that are able to walk through that. So what's the friction there? Why can't we make that determination and move forward in creating the determination at the local child care facility?
So again, I can't speak to that. The child care assistance program is separate from us, and that is not my level of expertise.
Why would that be separate? And maybe this, Wesley, is things that we need to work with further, because I'm super concerned that even in my Friday afternoon on phone calls with a member of Division of Regulated Child Care, multiple times in that 17-minute phone call, I was told, that's not my division. And I'm thinking, if I'm in Liz's position and I'm trying to onboard the 54 waiting list and the $300,000 that I've already lost by being closed for 5 months or not open for 5 months, let me say that differently. And then I'm that parent that doesn't have my child. And so I'm probably not working either. I mean, it's a $300,000 effect for this child care, but this is a multi-million-dollar effect to our workforce and our community. So I want your thoughts. What else can we do? And tell us, collapse a division, fire everybody. I'm just kidding. That is not at all what I mean. But knowing that we hire incredible child-centric focused adults in this operation, how can we utilize them?
Mr. Duke, you want to step up to the table?
Thank you all for recognizing me back there jumping up and down. Apologize that. No, and
You should introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. Hi, Wesley Duke. I'm the General Counsel at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Senator Thomas, for seeing me. No, this is one of these areas where regulated child care functions as more of a traditional licensure and regulation, and I think some of the things you've talked about here today when it comes to center sizes and measurements and all those traditional regulatory issues, and then you've got the DCBS child care. I think you've heard Senator Carroll mention Andrea Day, who's over that. So, that's their function in regard to funding and programmatic areas there. However, they work hand in hand together, and what I do wish Miss Day was here, because she could answer most or all these questions very well, because she does a wonderful job doing what she does. So what I think we need to do is put her, Mrs. Moore, together with you, Senator Frankie Fromeyer, and kind of talk through some of these issues, because they do work hand in hand, and they do need to probably, once again, have probably even more coordination between the two on these issues, because once again, it's very important for the center, because they work with both the traditional regulatory side and the funding side and all that. So I would like to propose maybe we could have if we want to continue this conversation elsewhere, to have all those people at the table, because I really think they can answer all these questions and get you the answers that you need, and also help all these centers and these providers get those answers as well. So I would like to extend that to continue this conversation, to get all those people at the table and move forward to getting you all that information.
Would that ultimately promote the innovation? This has been an 18-month conversation since I was last told that CCAP eligibility took a person almost 2 hours, and the director of the daycare was on the phone making these calls. So to me, this is something that we needed to innovate well before today. So what's the friction that's keeping us from being much more effective and much more efficient? It shouldn't be me promoting that conversation. I'm an ignoramus. My youngest is 16 years old, so I have not been in this process myself personally. But when we're hearing, and I hear so much friction about the need for childcare, and then I'm seeing these barriers that the state has created. For what good purpose?
Well, and I think going back to what I think that was reached out to us about being here today in regard to the regulated child care side, in where we could get better. I think we need to work on our regulations. Our regulations need to be modernized. They need to be brought up to speed. Definitions need to be clarified. I think Mrs. Moore mentioned, for example, we're talking about the definition of contiguous. I mean, that's something as a gray area. Well, that shouldn't be a gray area. That should be a really hard and fast black and white letter law about what that means. And I think we need to work on that. I know Senator Carroll, we've had some conversations about other regulations in this area that need to be modernized. But that's step one, because that's what our people apply every day when they're out there in these facilities. Number two, I think technology. We are still heavily reliant upon paper. It's 2026. That's really not where we should be. We need to move past that and be accessible. Once again, I think you mentioned a video walkthrough. That's a fairly industry standard thing in a lot of other industries to use those tools. So two things: one, modernizing our regulations and trying to utilize or leverage technology to make the process more user friendly and make it more expedited. Those are the two things that I personally that I've identified, in my time at the cabinet, that need to happen.
Thank you. And I am very grateful, Mrs. Moore, that you took the time to be here today as well to help us, help our Kentuckians be more effective and efficient. And Liz and Katrina, your work, thousands of parents are served by you. Thank you. And lots of babies that love their lives because they get to hang out with other babies that are having a good time together. That it matters. Safely, it matters. Yeah.
So I'll give my seat back, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go back to the life safety issues of you getting your initial certification for the building. You're just down the street from the Beverly Hills Supper Club, which is the impetus for Department of Housing, Building, and Construction being formed for life safety issues in the beginning. And that's why the state takes a role in it, but you're in a county that also does local inspections. So how many different jurisdictions did you have to engage with? I mean, can you count? I know you looked around for some, but ultimately when you found out the right ones to talk to, how many was that between your state, local, city?
Yeah, we worked with county officials. We worked with our local fire department. I work with Rick McNee, the state building inspector. I've worked with Tim Jewett, the state fire marshal. We've worked with everyone, and there isn't a clear-cut path. In fact, on site, the state building inspector got into a discussion with our local fire department about who governs who. There isn't a clear-cut path. So, and we want to be safe. I want to ensure that my building is safe for children, but there just isn't a clear-cut path as to who governs what and where that line lies. But I would say we had at least 4 different organizations in our center just to get the Learning Center approved and open.
Thank you. So does the cabinet, CHF, do they have even though we don't have it online, even though it's all paper, how long did it take you? Do you have one person there that could be the advocate to go to all these different agencies for a new center like this? Is there supposedly a individual there? Do you have that position?
That would reach out to the fire marshal and the other.
Yeah, that
department?
would help coordinate a new facility. And we're trying to get these facilities up, new facilities. Is there one person, whether it's electronic or paper, that will be an advocate for that new facility?
We do attempt to reach out to individuals to assist and provide direct paths to contacts, things like that. But we do not have the bandwidth to do that for every provider. We have 2,024 providers in the state that are licensed. But for new individuals coming on, we do attempt to do our best to provide them those avenues and those connections. However, often, those contacts have changed. They are led to other contacts from there, other hoops to jump through. So we do our best to do that, but we don't always have the most up-to-date information.
Right. So we got, excuse me, Mr. Chair, we have 2,000 sites, but I don't think we have 2,000 new child care providers coming on at any given
Not
time.
new, sir. Licensed.
Right.
Currently licensed.
And there are issues between the state fire marshal. State fire marshal actually does free inspections. We'll do that after your facility takes over. If there's a certified local your fire department, if they're certified, they will do you to get you up in a renovation or a new build. So there's a handoff. But there's additional responsibilities for the state fire marshal in regard to child care facilities, even getting them up. But that's what I would expect somebody at CHFS to know and to be able to communicate and to cut through the confusion. You should have a liaison there that works with new applicants who already knows the state and local fire departments and where the lines are to get that going. And that's just the fire side. We still have the planners. She had problems with the planners too. And that's a whole nother issue on who does that. But for a city like Alexandria, for a county like Campbell County, I would think you would have somebody in the department, if we want to have new child care facilities and we need to expedite them, that knows for every major jurisdiction in the state who they need to talk to and has a relationship with each one of these inspection organizations within that. Could you allocate that position? Have you contemplated that, a position like that?
Again, at this point, we would love to have a position that we could dedicate just for that. Our central office staff are available to provide that information, and we do the best that we can with the staff that we have currently, based on our budget. But yes, we would love to be able to provide more assistance to dedicate that time to help the new providers, because we definitely recognize the need for childcare and have work hard to try to help folks to get through that process. I know in this particular circumstance it was a difficult situation for her, but once we were able to get the correct information, as I said, we were able to turn her application around within 3 days to help her to get the license.
That's the key.
And so once, I think we are do a relatively good job at pivoting when necessary. It's unfortunate that we have to pivot at times, but when we are able, we try to do our best to expedite those situations and to help as much as we can, because we are in the business of safety for children. That is our goal. That's why we are all here. That's why we, work for the Office of Inspector General, and it's what's most important to us, as it is, I'm sure, to you.
Right, it is. And I think we have a lot of people that are concerned about safety, particularly Charles, and at the city, the county,
Yes.
the state level. And they're going to do their job according to the regs that we require. But I put it on CHFS to point an applicant to the right level at that right location. That's the key on that. You need to give them more direction, and I don't see why you can't have an individual that would, in any given situation, know that she should go to the state fire marshal, the local building inspector, the county versus the city planning. Okay, these are all things that don't change overnight, and it doesn't take everybody at your department to know them.
Sure.
You just get a
Senator
good
Williams.
liaison with the.
Senator Williams, respectfully, I think the problem was not having the contact information. It was once you made contact, the requirements that came about from that. So we were able to provide the direction on who to speak to. It was after you were making the contact, the changes that were required, that was the issue and concern, primarily in this case.
Yeah, and if I can add in, I do feel like that's the responsibility of Child Care Aware, and they're very helpful with all of those things. They do guide us as new providers and current providers and give us the resources as to where to go. And in our situation, it was the misinformation from licensing when I called directly to licensing to figure out if we needed an initial application or if it was going to be just a capacity increase. That's where the breakdown started with licensing. With the building department, it was just a matter of they weren't willing to apply a common sense effect and realize our situation was not normal. They were just following the letter of the law. Okay. But I do feel like Child Care Aware is very helpful in guiding us to the governing bodies.
So there are,
let me-
we're going to have to move on.
I am
We're gonna
going
need
to exit
wrap this
out,
up.
okay?
Okay.
I just want to say that's what building departments do. That's what building inspectors do. They follow the letter of the law. That is their job, Okay, I just don't want to throw them under the bus because they do that, and we just need to make sure that
I
that is
think
their
as a
job.
committee, we're going to need to kind of dig down another layer in that, and then look at how, with what we're looking at with the community child care designation, on how we can expedite some of those processes. But maybe that's something we do during the interim, is hear from state inspectors and fire marshals to understand that, and maybe we can work on some policy to pull all of that together. I do agree as far as having a navigator within the division. That would be great, just to have one person for all of these issues to help. It would be daunting to start a new child care business from scratch. I can't imagine that, in learning the regulations. So if we're going to really push growth, we're really going to have those services up front to help. Senator Thomas, I'm going to let you close it out, sir.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to your leadership, because I know my comments are probably going to take at least 10 minutes regarding questions. So I will defer, let you close this meeting out, and I would ask you if you could have another follow-up meeting at some point, because I do have some things I want to say here, but given the time constraints, I cannot meet your time constraints, and so I'll wait till another day.
I appreciate that, sir. And we will have additional meetings on this. This is not an issue that's going to go away, and so many different levels of this and layers of this that we are starting to address, and that will continue. And I think we all have the same goal of making it better, but you all shouldn't have to go through those struggles trying to expand your businesses. We're begging you to do that, and then you have barriers that cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's not fair. And, I think probably the main factor was that mistake up front from the employee that gave you incorrect advice, and that probably could have addressed a lot of it. The building code issues, that should be able, in some manner, be consolidated where they can take care of that. But I do know that there's a lot of friction between fire marshal's office and the state inspector, and they're utilizing fire marshals in local districts. I know in Paducah, we usually get the fire marshal. So it's different throughout the state. But thank you all so much for being here. And thank you. I'm interested in learning more about your centers and your initiatives to grow, and some financial discussions on how that's working for you, and maybe learn something from you that we can utilize in policy in the future. So thank you for being here. Head Start, great program, and thank you all so much for all you do up in your part of the state.
Thank you.
If
Thank
there
you,
are
Senator.
no other questions, thank you all for being here. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.